Cheers.
Cheers.
To Project Vagabond. Welcome to our channel. The last couple episodes, we looked in the past and we looked at the boats that we had, things we did like, things that we didn't like, and today we thought we would take you to the future and walk you through our plan of what we expect to do over the next few years in our next boat.
So here we go.
So here's our map of the loop that we are planning to take. And once we find the perfect boat for us, we've narrowed down the location of where we want to dock the boat, right? One is right there where you see the boat icon in South Florida. And the other two are in Georgia and South Carolina. And we picked those three places, and they're for reasons.
Yeah, mostly just because it's a great place to start the loop. It's good for insurance to be above the Florida line, although it would be really cool to be in Miami and just hop over to the Bahamas too. Mm-hmm. But we're probably going to start around here, and then moving up from the bottom of Florida, we'll take the ICW. The ICW is the intracoastal waterway, and it allows you to move large distances without actually going into the ocean. So if you're scared of the ocean, if you're scared of the swells, like the ICW allows you to move a great distance on the loop without even going out into the open ocean. From Georgia, we would go north to South Carolina, Charleston, up to North Carolina, and then up into the Chesapeake Bay. And the Chesapeake is basically a whole nother summer if you want to spend the time going around to all the different tributaries and inlets. And then once you're in the bottom of Jersey, then this is the first time that you're actually going to be in the ocean. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to be out in the ocean for all day. And then taking it up to New York City, and then up into New York, into the canal system.
But I think it would be fun once you're in New York. I'm looking forward to actually boating and getting to see the Statue of Liberty up close on our own personal boat. And just looking at New York with a different point of view and a different skyline. I think the other thing that I'm most excited about is following that little line up into, like, as it veers towards Quebec. I think it would be really fun to go into Canada and just go through all of the different locks and view how gorgeous it is to be in Canada in all that Canada has to offer.
Yeah, and then the Canadian portion you can see is that little break in the red line between Lake Ontario and Upper Lake Huron. And that's where some of the gems of the trip are, particularly up in the Canadian, 150-year-old lock system. So once you get past the Canadian canal system and you're into the upper part of Lake Huron, you can see up there it's really just called Georgian Bay. And I'm really looking forward to Georgian Bay. It seems like it's a place where there's like thousands of islands and lots of places to anchor, lots of places to take the dinghy. Seems like you can spend an entire summer up there. I wouldn't want to be there not in the summer. Like fall would be too cold, spring would be too cold, but summer would be perfect.
It might be okay in fall or spring, but it wouldn't be as comfortable, I would say. But I do think that it even though this looks like we're taking this trip nonstop, I do think that, they do we call it pleasure boating for a reason. And so this just outlines the entire trip. But I do think that we've committed, like if we end up in a place and we really, really enjoy it,
we're staying there for as long as we want.
Yeah, we'll stay until we're ready to go and explore the next place.
Yeah.
I think that's the best part and the most anticipated part of the trip for me is getting to actually see all these different places from the water and not from land.
Yeah.
I do think it'll be really interesting to go through the Great Lakes, especially Ontario and Superior. Are we going to bounce into Superior as well? And
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it would be really great to see the Great Lakes, all of them, really, right? If we take this trip.
Yeah, so where the boat has stopped on the diagram is Mackinac Island. It's at the top of Michigan. This is usually a place where people will stop midway and collect themselves before moving on. You can see once you leave Mackinac Island, you go down the west coast of Michigan through Lake Michigan. A lot of people take the Wisconsin side instead of the Michigan side because there's supposedly more to do on the Wisconsin side. You can see people can go into Green Bay and spend a whole bunch of time up in Green Bay. And then you can go down the Milwaukee side and spend time in, a major city like Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. And then eventually you get to Chicago down here, spend some time in Chicago, and then bounce into the river system, onto the Mississippi.
Which will be very interesting to go through the river system right there between Chicago and Kentucky there.
And so, you're really not on the Mississippi that long. You can see here it really is just a little bit on the Missouri-Illinois border. But then you bounce off of the Mississippi onto the Tenn-Tom Waterway. You could go down the Mississippi all the way down to New Orleans down there. But not a lot of people take that route because there's not a lot of fuel stops. And it's not very friendly to recreational boaters. It's mainly commercial barge traffic. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people take the Tenn-Tom Waterway just because it's more for recreational boats and it's more scenic. And then once you're on the Tenn-Tom Waterway, you're going south through Tennessee, and you spend a lot of time in Alabama until you get to Mobile. And then right when you get to Mobile at the edge of the Gulf, you bounce across the Gulf. And usually most people take it straight to Clearwater over on the west coast of Florida. That is an all day and overnight crossing. It's 150 or so miles. It's probably the biggest leg of the entire trip. And then once you're on the west coast of Florida, you can take your time, make your way down to Key West, down at the bottom of the Keys, and then slowly go up the Florida Keys system of islands up until you get to Miami again. And then at this point, we would probably, take stock of where we were and our trip, maybe pause for a little bit before we go on the next big one. And
by this point, we would have hit, 19 states?
Yeah.
All the way through from Florida, all the way up, back to Florida again. I think that's, a really great bucket list type check mark in our life.
And the red route here is really only the main route. It doesn't talk about all of these side trips, and it doesn't talk about the replayability of the Great Loop. There's people who have done the Great Loop 2, 3, 4 times, and they've stopped at completely different places.
Yeah.
Every time. So it has a lot of replayability. And side trips, you can jump off the river and go up to Nashville and Knoxville. There's even people who go all the way up north, up the Mississippi, all the way up to Minnesota, the headwaters of the Mississippi up in Minnesota. So lots of different side trips.
But I think this is our main plan here. We may veer off of it now and then, but I think over the next, I don't even know, many years, we'll be traversing these red lines all the way across the eastern U.S.
Right.
And then into the Bahamas, the Keys, into the Caribbean, I think, post loop.
Yeah. So that's the loop. That's probably going to take a couple of years. We'll talk about next what the next trip is going to be. Our next major trip after the Great Loop, we want to upgrade our boat. We're probably going to have to upgrade to a bigger boat at this point. And we want to probably leave from, again, the southeastern part of the United States, hopefully Miami. And once we upgrade the boat, we want to cruise for a good amount of time through the Caribbean. So let's start with the Bahamas. And we could actually spend a lot of time in the Bahamas. There's people who have spent, months and months just cruising around the interior of the many, many Bahamian islands. And, maybe stop at the bottom, collect ourselves, and then get ready to go down to some of the more southernmost islands like Turks and Caicos, spend some time there, and then headed down to the Dominican Republic, and then cross over to Puerto Rico. At this point, we're talking maybe a month or so in each one. I've heard some great things about yachters that go down to both the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. Maybe try to avoid hurricanes as well. And then from here, we would move into the Virgin Islands, both the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. And then spend some time there, and then start jumping down to St. Kitts, and then down to St. Lucia, eventually at the bottom of the chain of islands. You could keep going in theory down to like Grenada and others, but from what I've heard, St. Lucia is probably the point where you need to turn around, and that's mostly because of it just becomes less and less safe the closer you go down to South America.
And I do think that we would need to turn the boat around, get it docked, winterized, ready for the winter.
Yeah.
And if we're too far south, it would be a really long haul from there back to the U.S. and into the dock.
So, we would turn around and we would go back, make our way back to probably Miami, Fort Lauderdale. But I think this whole trip would actually be at least a year, maybe longer. I could definitely see ourselves stopping in some of these ports of call for a long period of time.
I wonder if we're going to get out of the Bahamas. We've spent a couple of New Years at the Atlantis in the Bahamas, and it feels like we could stay in Nassau for a month before you even move on. So, for sure, I think in our lifetime we'll finish all of the Caribbean islands. Just don't know how quickly, because there's so much to see and visit that I want to enjoy it all.
Yeah. Right. So at this point, when we eventually finish with the Caribbean, I think we start heading west. And we're not going to go directly west. We want to kind of enjoy the scenery while we go. So we would probably go from, let's just say, Key West here, and we would head on over to New Orleans. It's fun to go to New Orleans, especially by boat. And then maybe after a little while there, just cross the Gulf and go down to Cancun. And Cancun is kind of like a very heavy-duty yachting set of infrastructure down there. So we could probably stay in Cancun for a while.
Yeah.
After Cancun, we would move on down to the Panama Canal.
We'd have to leave the great margaritas.
Yeah.
Seafood.
And then probably bounce off of Jamaica and then refuel, head down to Panama, cross through the Panama Canal, and then head up on the Pacific side of North America. And, there's probably many places along the way here to anchor and to cruise. Probably stopping in Acapulco. This is going to be a pretty long leg of the trip right here, is getting up to the west side of Mexico. But again, as long as we have the right boat and the right preparations, we could stop anywhere we want. And then move up to the west side of Mexico. A lot of people are maybe concerned about the west side of Mexico. They ask, is it really safe? The west side of Mexico is very, very catering to yacht owners, boat owners, people that come in by boats. Over in Mazatlan and that general area, there's like many yacht basins over there catering to billionaires and millionaires. So, it's more developed than you would think, actually, over on that side. And then we would end up in Cabo San Lucas at the end of the Baja. Once we're in Cabo San Lucas, we want to spend a good amount of time in the Sea of Cortez. And Jacques Cousteau, many decades ago, called it the world's aquarium. And however beautiful it is, with lots of snorkeling and scuba diving sites, it's very, very isolated. You can see on the Baja here, there's almost no major towns. And we would have to almost exclusively do anchoring. We would have to take a lot of food and supplies with us. Mm-hmm. However, it would be fabulous scuba diving, fabulous snorkeling, fishing. Mm-hmm. And then, after maybe 6 months or so, we'd come back to Cabo, restock. And then at this point, we're starting to head home. And heading home is San Diego. So we'd have to go up the west coast of the Baja. And there's not a lot of places to stop here other than anchoring at various places. But once you get up to the middle of the Baja, you stop at a place called Turtle Bay, which is, it's a little bit around halfway up the Baja. And Turtle Bay is a really nice place to stop for a couple of days. It's like 2 miles across, turquoise blue water, and protected on all sides. And it's only about 12 feet deep. It's not a very deep bay. And you can see the bottom. It's full of fish. There's some locals that will bring out some diesel to you. But, for the most part, there's nothing there. It's very isolated. It's kind of like a nice place to stop. But don't think you can reprovision your boat there. It's going to be whatever you can get. And then from Turtle Bay, we would go up to Ensenada. Ensenada is the last place on the Baja that has supplies before you cross the border. And then we would end up in San Diego. And San Diego is where we live today. And we would probably sell the boat at that point.
We don't know. But we'd end up full circle back in the San Diego area. And then we'll figure out what happens after that. We don't know. We've just went all around the southern half of North America, and, we don't know what'll happen. So we'll just have to stay tuned and figure it out.
And I think, for all of these trips strung back to back to back, we're really talking about like 5 to 10 years here. We're talking about lots and lots of nautical miles. We're talking about upgrading boats. We're talking about crossing oceans and into other oceans. So I don't anticipate we're going to be done with this quickly. This is going to be something we're probably going to have to spend the next 5 to 10 years doing. And then at that point, we'll sell the boat. We'll be back home. And then it's probably on to buy the next boat in the next destination after that. But this is plenty for us to chew on for the time being.
So that's our entire plan for now. Obviously, we're going to stop where we want to stop. We're going to stay as long as we're going to stay. We're just going to take our time and enjoy the time that we have while we're healthy and happy and able to crew a boat, just the two of us. And, we hope you come along with us and watch our journey. Watch us fix the boat. Find ways to stay afloat.
Find the boat.
Yeah. And find ways to stay afloat and just, discover the gorgeous place that we call home.
All right. Thank you for watching. This concludes episode 3. We'll see you in the next one.
Cheers from Project Vagabond.
Cheers.